there is like a new transition right now with like now so right now so we thoroughly offering and dictating and destroying the team like delivering still but able to bring that giving delivering still surviving and like not only that but like able to bring that right now getting that huge ego would be might out of like on extremely crushed by Nazis defeating Gazil and like Ambassador like Gazil, Ambassador one select and right now Ambassador Gazil select only maybe even go unconscious right now. So it's like the intensity of like now so that's the stagger like the scenario that I'm doing, but still Ambassador like one Gazil is waking up like Ambassador like with by the time I'm with something like so they would be just and I'm with the like look like current fight between like the country and like the that is like I'm definitely for like so they could like definitely not end up by like the scenario that I'm moving and I'm definitely predicting like sitting about the same for like the scenario to be like as like the dude would be about to take a bus like right now those people here. I mean like as like Jose would be able to take a bus like from those people like the scenario to be like at that point Makarov showing up and like Makarov totally like and then maybe like Makarov like trying to like basically dying by trying to like protect Erza by getting in the way of like this attack fatal attack against like like in the scenario that I know the friends so like that way like Makarov gave a life to like protect Erza like the scenario that I made right then would be when like I'm like after defeating the deal that now so be like showing up to that location within like the kind of skill basis like the scenario that I'm doing. So like it being like macro stuff being that I've list so to that all sorts of like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm also putting up for like how macro would be like even able to like make it to like the giant fans build castle like without like none of the characters your members great number of characters you remember who are like fighting against like the shades right outside like the castle like not in macro and those are like macro composable still having like a tiny bit of like mana and like magic left in him with this like I'm like him so will be like mostly using like this like or like some sort of like a magic to like make himself appear invisible. It's like the least likely possibility that I'm the more likely possibility that I'm bringing like macro most likely using some sort of like a macro like from that house of like that witch doctor witch doctor woman like the like they're like there might have been like a magical item like an invisible clock magical item. So like I'm looking at macro showing up to like the base of like the fan still while wearing that invisible cloak and that way like none of like the great number of characters still members like outside not realizing that macro had walked past them and needed to the giant fan will just select the scenario that I'm looking on the parade. So like that way like I'm looking like macro that's only giving up his life to like protect us from that closer like intense state of that like showing the scenarios that I'm living. So like once like Harza will be saved that way and like macros that like shocking Naruto and all of them and that one like scenario that I'm with me. So like Naruto is right now all char from this like plates and everything after like eating like the prince and everything like I'm like Naruto like I'm sitting in my brain so that the macro stuff that can go to bring that would be most likely what like Naruto would be like seeing when Naruto would be like making it down to like the floor where Jose will use like the scenario that I'm doing. That totally not only shocking but extremely enraging Naruto because like I'm living in the case of Sansa like if one and the others who are in like around like them all under the brain would be totally like overcome with like that extreme shock of shock of like basically losing macro but like I'm living in the case of Naruto alone like I'm living like even after the shock, like I'm doing that shock, like now typically being able to like come out of that shock like state and like that now typically getting extremely enraged with towards like Jose and like now to the like, intent to like stay to take Jose's life like will be fighting off against Jose at that point with like now this plane in that lighting up that with that great of intensity that ever at that point of like the scenario that I'm in. Yet like I'm looking like in that now to what Jose fight like I'm looking like even though initially Jose I'm looking like might be like but might be like seriously pushed around by like not too intense like playing powers and everything. Like I'm looking like without my great like self like I'm looking like not Jose like bringing out his like true powers and like Charlie or scoring and defeating Naruto like the scenario that I'm doing and that's Jose will be about to take Naruto's like I'm looking like that which doctor woman like I'm looking her like the moment macro would be dying like I'm looking her even from like the fourth area like. I think that is for like her being able to like send like that like Makarov died is like the scenario that I'm expecting. So like that in at that point would be too much for her because like I was in the play she might have only while Makarov was like leaving to that protect like the heritage will right now like I'm looking like her state towns will be in that the confused like kind of state where like she might have not been able to like decide where on one side of her might have wanted to like just go along with like macro to like protect macro to ensure the protection of macro especially because like definitely macro and that this doctor woman will be secretly married into the minimum friendship. So definitely there might have been that side of her and like there might have been that other side of her which might have been like which might have like the prominent scar from like her past experience involving like being part of like a user skill because like I'm looking like in the same perfect maybe it might have been to the itself like that might have been one of the members of like macro as well as that list of women like user skill before like the very thing like they might have all been in like a different skill. Definitely not the members involved like back then I'm looking like it might have been pretty like those like the trial might have maybe happened and like that might have resulted in maybe like maybe one or more of like the guild members like ending up dying by like like maybe that and like they might have like declared their guild and might have like teamed up with like sought the help of like the dark guild to like not sort of like an ambush attack at like their guild. Maybe that then maybe it would like those jealousy of like maybe back then like uh Lucent maybe might have also had a crush towards like or like the bit of affection towards like that witch doctor woman. But like the witch doctor woman back then that might have fallen in love for Makarov and maybe coupling with that like and maybe also like the possibility of like Makarov being like the first person in like their guild to maybe become like another saint or like Makarov becoming like another saint before Jose might have been what might have happened. So like overall Jose might have had the same jealousy and might have even to a certain like Jose not wanting to be part of like that with the guild and Jose wanting to like start his own with it. So like with that and then like another thing like Jose might have decided to like destroy like the try and like destroy and like that because in which like Jose might have been back then and like I'm like that incident maybe might be like the reason for like I'm like that is of a woman that leaving like the guilt in which she was in that might have been what might have happened and like her deciding to like stay away from everyone and like her living that like solitude kind of like a life within that platforms might have also happened due to the situation so like there will be like that side of her that will be like that that will be having that trauma of her that will be like making her feel extremely reluctant to like being so help macro or taking times definitely also like about that so like I'm just like macro just like I'm looking like and start possibly being able to like sense that from like chat box like I'm looking like her feeling that I will get at that point and her rushing to like uh, rushing to listen like rush to Magnolia feel like basically to stop Jose before like Jose might and that's why was like then that like basically and those like it will be the last thing matter of the point will be one thing that like she will get really aware of so like slowly due to like that get then regret connecting to like macro onto the things are showing up. So like I'm looking like this narrative like as Jose will be about to take Natsu's life like I'm looking like her showing up and her attacking Jose. So like I'm looking then like a fight between like Jose and like that rich person woman happening at that point. So like also like was in that I'm looking where like I'm looking even if and by the like I'm sure like Jose might have probably for defeated and sidelined like now to also like about Israel. So like that fight between like Jose and like that which doctor opening like I'm like even in that fight like Jose like eventually like totally or that's that which doctor woman as like Jose might be about to take the life of that which doctor woman and at that point like now and all stuff would be like thoroughly defeated by Jose and it would be like a sideline kind of like a so like as Jose was eventually about to take the life of that which doctor woman maybe at that last second might be when the whole gang of like the senior fairy guild members like and then being like extremely in an serious and enraged manner like the entire gang of like the senior fairy guild members like showing up right there and like saving that bit of woman at that point like the scenario that I was so like then like I'm looking like stand totally seeing that all of them like I'm looking like maybe like Jose totally like assessing the situation and being able to assess the situation and like seeing like the possibility of that if Jose by himself goes against like all the senior members of like the heritage will together. Like the possibility of like Jose being overwhelmingly teacher and might even ending up by their hand would be something that Jose might be feeling as of like a seriously a relevant possibility. So like I'm going due to this reason I'm going like maybe like Jose at that point ending up deciding to like retreat and that way like Jose like still surviving and retreating and escaping is like the Avengers scenario that I'm going to take and not the version. And I'm going to like the in that episode the Jill like he actually stopped and like traumatized by like natural stuff. But like I'm going to bring like still like while they would be all and on top of like Makarov that like with the complete destruction of like just heritage will base as well like they would be totally shocked and would be like absolutely clueless to like what to do next and like everyone will get only blind but like I'm thinking at that point I'm thinking like maybe that this one woman like maybe due to her guilt and regret that she might have because like at that time she was feeling as like it was due to her that like my brother had ended up dying and all that. It's also and like it's also like a possibility that I'm maybe like when Makarov after like the destruction of like the initial guilt in which like Makarov as well as like the bit of the woman as well as like those they might have been according to the reference like after the destruction of that guilt like maybe like it might be then that Makarov might have started like the therapeutic guilt and Jose might have started like the fantasy which like also like about the dynamic so like when Makarov might have started like the therapeutic guilt itself like Makarov might have repeatedly told might have asked that this doctor woman to a key part of like the guild and she might have repeatedly rejected like that requested matter of settlement. So like that guilt, all that guilt under the setting in at that point for like that this doctor woman and like her deciding to like while on seeing like the crowd faces that fast and like pointed and blank faces of like and shocked faces of all the faces remember at that point like that was when that her basically deciding to like give them hope and like other one required like deciding to like make it up for like macro and basically her deciding to like replace macro as like the new master of like the derivatives and that way like giving them all that hope and courage like and like giving all of the derivatives members like that absolute strength and motivation and giving them that morale base to push like and like them rebuilding like the heritage will build and like rebuilding it like stronger than before, like when you build scenario by the digital. So that usually happens with like a thousand six that about this thing sitting on the paper. So like the middle so right now with like now to Tarley or pouring and sitting and destroying the gene like I'm looking at right now with this feeling that absolute embarrassment, especially with like Getty having such a massive ego. And so like that ego getting crushed like Getty would be like totally feeling that absolute embarrassing of like listening to that now. So definitely I'm saying it. And also stating the presentation maybe right now for like getting going unconscious or like not but like regardless of the like once like getting especially able to bring intelligence surviving and getting as well managing like escape still is like still the scenario that I'm doing once the current fight would be over like by the time the current fight would be over like I'm looking the dealers will definitely manage like escape. It's like the scenario that I'm doing and at that point and from that point on after like escaping like I'm doing the deal to be so extremely risky and the deal no matter like what like they won't be able to like shake off the thoughts of like that absolute embarrassment of like losing to like Nacho and getting it like that is ego for us to like the scenario that I'm doing that like I'm doing getting like training relentlessly and uh, in an out of manner with that absolute intent to like eventually make us a return and basically to want to have that real battle against like Nacho like Jajin might be totally planning on like basically totally outpouring and defeated Nacho but like making Nacho suffer and basically then to take Naruto's like the survivalistic intent to like get that absolute revenge on like Naruto and because Goji training relentlessly from that point on and then the friend definitely it would be up to it should be only in like the distant future. While once like Gajin would be totally feeling as his like he's like just training is like complete and that's like he's like he will be feeling confident at that point that basically he's strong enough to like bring down Naruto that comes to like uh, it will be only at that point like the biggest computer that I'm looking but like a indexated signature I'm like different information is return to get revenge on that. So it's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point I'm thinking Kajil would be like a whole lot stronger and I'm looking like even the Nato cell would be a whole lot stronger. Yet like I'm thinking Kajil initially in that point like totally putting Nato in like the pressure is also like an scenario that I'm looking at. Yet like I'm doing like in that battle as well in which like Jesse will try to get his revenge on Natsu as well. Like in that fight, which I'm looking for will be taking place between like Natsu and Jesse in like the temperature as well. Like Natsu totally, totally thoroughly overpowering and defeating Jesse is like the scenario that I'm looking, and that will be it for like Jesse because like in that fight like I'm looking super either like Jesse like totally in that return of Gizil, like I'm looking at Gizil once again doing a lot of that villainous things to that enrage Nazis before like fighting up against Nazis, especially when the entrance. So that maybe that Gizil at that point in like the temperature were crossing all lines and all limits that I'm looking like in that fight, like maybe I was sort of like in that fight between like Nazis and Gizil, like within the around and maybe like Nazis pulling up not only offering a defeated Jadil, but like Jadil ending up that infinite dying in that fight. It's like one possible scenario that I'm doing. Like the other possible that I'm doing like with that in that rebattle, like with that defeat by Jadil against like Nasu. Even though like the other possibility like for Jadil to survive, like I'm still through that defeat, like Jadil ego would be totally and completely shattered and like basically Jadil from that point on would be like going into like a mindset of black thing like basically accept feeling they did at that point feeling along the lines of like an accepting kind of like a way as if like there's a that like Naso is definitely a whole lot stronger than Gedil and Gedil won't be ever able to like defeat Naso like along those lines like Gedil feeling at that point and like Gedil totally giving up on his like desire to like basically a strict desire to like get revenge on Naso from that through that defeat through that way that is within like a deal and I think that's the simply the first like the company scenarios that I'm going to train. Also, the minimum 3% right now as for like the after that final attack with which like Nazi defeated the deal like Nazi not being able to move out of the Paragodi president solely due to like Nazi that while launching that final attack against like Getty which defeated Getty like at that point I'm throwing Nazi might have been like hoping filled with that absolute rage towards like Getty and like, the final will that I'm afraid Nazi might have put in all that rage into that final attack final sequence of attack that I'm going to might have even totally overdone it. Like, because of that, all those emotions, like I'm just like Nasu might have totally overdone it on his like final attack against like Brazil. That like I'm sure Nasu might have even gone beyond like the limits of his own body while like attacking that final attack against like Brazil. And this might be like the reason for like that there could be that recoil effect of like going crossing all that limits and that through that final attack again like that might have resulted right now in like Natsu's like body like Natsu totally being unable to like move right now. That's definitely my injury and person right now. That is a technical preemption right now as well. Like why exactly Jose didn't finish off Makarov after like Makarov had lost all of his like mental powers to area back in the camp. Like I'm thinking like that might be due to like Jose like realistically Jose might be having this like extreme obsession out of like jealousy towards like Makarov, even from like way back from like the about the human resurrection because like Makarov might have even that like there's about since I got the member camp the thing at one point like Makarov and Jose might have been like the same thing. So like I'm just like even at that point like I'm thinking Jose might have had this extreme jealousy towards like Makarov because like always like Makarov might have been performing better than Jose. And for Jose, like it might have been like that ultimate goal of like Jose to like be like the strongest maybe in like the world, definitely not the brain version. Jose might secretly have such a goal of definitely not the brain, and Jose might have been finally putting in all the hard work and working towards that goal, but still even with like Jose putting in all that hard work and effort into that, like maybe Macro might have been naturally talented and like Macro might have been always surprising Jose in like point uh, even while both of them might have been in like the same guilt in like the same about the criminal brain. So like there might have been the same obsession of jealousy with like Jyotish was like macro and this might be the precise reason for that might be even present even to like the percentage of the human brain which is so like this might be like the precise reason for like Jyotish like not having taken macro's life back when like macro had lost his like magical all of his like magical powers to renew to like Arya back in like the final base Stephanie direction because like the extreme villains within like those I might have wanted like a macro to like suffer before he takes like macro life is definitely my this might be like a realistic plan of like Jose. It's definitely not a direction. So Jose might want to take out all that frustration that he might have had with entire time towards like macro by making macro suffer both were suffering. That was definitely my preparation. So definitely, Joseph's plan would be to to basically eliminate definitely Joseph would be whenever aware of how precious macro sees heritage is. Each of the how precious each of the members of the heritage is to macro. About that, Jose would be whenever aware of certain elements. So basically for Jose to eliminate each and every single one of the heritage members, and then to have Makarov shockingly find out about it, and while Makarov would be totally shocked and will be going through that extreme suffering of having each and every member of this precious guild having died. Then basically while Makarov would be going through that extreme suffering at that point, for Jose to basically show up in front of macro to then detect macros might be that extreme realistic intent of Jose is definitely my own theory and question. So the name of the mention right now is for according to Jose the Phantom Lord being the number one, always being the number one guild and recently I'm that I'm might have been might not be the actuality of the situation when it comes to all of when considering all of the guilds across the entirety of the world, across the multiple countries that would definitely be out there across the world, considering definitely while comparing to all the exceptionally strong guilds that hold the members of the chambers and something who exist across the world, across different countries across the world and while comparing to those strongest skills out there, even the number one stand-up law skill to be totally insignificant in terms of strength and currently even the fairy tale skills as well in comparison to those skills out there in the out there in the when compared to the entirety of all the skills out there in the world I'm saying currently even the fairy tale skills strength as well as the Phantom Law guild strength as well would be only insignificant compared to them. It's definitely my brother. So that I'm considering might be that situation. So I'm considering it would be only in the country where Phantom Lord guild as well as the fairy tale guild is in the jack. It will be only in that country alone that basically the Phantom Lord guild might have been in the past might have been always like being the number one guild definitely meant of paying it. So at least when compared to the big picture even the Phantom Lord guild even way back then the past would be might have been an insignificant enough of strength for his guild when compared to the really strongest guilds out there in across the world is definitely not the framework. And about which I'm considering Jose might have never been even aware of might be the case is definitely not the framework. So I'm considering just because the Phantom Lord guild was had the past had remain always remained the number one strongest guild in just that country alone. Jose might have totally got overconfident, might have totally overestimated this Phantom Lord guild, saying that it's the number one strongest guild in the entirety of the world. When in actuality that might have definitely not been the case, might be the actuality of the situation is definitely my personal theory and question right now. So even in the present as Joseph the afraid to basically destroy the fairy tale guild and once again take back the position of being that number one guild to have the Phantom Lord guild once again be the number one guild in that number is still number even right now to the person Joseph is still unaware of the exceptionally strong skills that would exist out there across the world that would be far superiorly stronger than the Phantom Lord build and this build is definitely my personal and personal way. And especially protecting macro might be totally aware of this. It would be Jose alone that would be and just Phantom skill members alone that would be totally unaware of this and would be totally might have learned this and their might this and in this and that time might have lived in their little bubble of thing that they are the strongest and the number one guild in the entirety of the world. Might be the case of definitely or the actual situation definitely my personal impression. So my personal impression is Jose might have been someone who might have never in his life might have left his country. It's definitely one of the friendship. And that might be and because of that according to my information Jose might have such extreme limited knowledge as to the existence of the exceptionally powerful, superiorly powerful builds across the world when compared to the parallel game. Look definitely the possibility that I'm considering. So by in the case of macro, macro might have been someone in like the distant past during matter of youthful days, like I'm during Makarov might have been someone uh, who might have also in his youthful days might have been like believing that basically back then while like the fandom Lord Gill was like the number one in that country. Like maybe back then like I'm during Makarov as well might have been someone who might have been thinking that like the fandom Lord Gill is like the strongest guild is the and the number one guild definitely remember the reason. But like contrary to Lactose and Makarov back then itself like might have happened to like travel across like the world and might have shockingly found out like came to that realization that there are like all sorts of exceptionally powerful builds out there in comparison to like the fantasy skills like in comparison to like this that in comparison to like those skills like the fantasy skills like strength is like only insignificant like basically macros might have like found out about this and had this realization through like traveling across like the world which like macro might have done during in like the recent past especially in the game so macro totally contrary to like those might not be at all living in that whole bubble little bubble of like basically of like the feeling as if like the guild is like the number one in like the entire world especially my position. Okay, so like definitely know 300% right now for like Akra by mostly talking about Lucy, about like child not being able to like choose its path. Like I'm thinking like that dialogue like I'm thinking definitely Akra would be like would be able to like relate to her life as well. Definitely not the greatest because like I'm thinking while Akra said that dialogue as if like in like point that manner like I'm thinking like definitely there will be that connection to like Lucy and Akra where like they them both might have gone through that relatable situations to a certain extent where like I'm looking like while Lucy's parents might have definitely lack of suffering to like Lucy's like childhood like I'm looking like and right now in like Lucy's life as well causing suffering to like Lucy's life as well like I'm looking like it might have been like the same thing in like a sub situation as well to a certain extent where like I'm looking like in the case of Asa like I'm looking even to like the person like I'm looking like Asa might be that made it disappointed in that in like the fact that I'm definitely according to my book, I'm definitely like Aksa and Segret might definitely be siblings and that their parents might actually be Dark Guild members who definitely remember their parents might have been like exorcisms from Dark Guild members who might have totally died in like the past and definitely while fighting off against like a normal guild and that normal guild like member who might have taken the life of like either like there might have been like a war in which like a different like like a crime against like parents and those different might have been like not good members during that war like and like like mother might have ended up dying and as for like Erza and Segrin's father and those different like the normal guild member back then in like the Simplas who might have taken the life of like Erza and Segrin's father might have been like Nazi's father, Dragonid was like might have been very impression. So like this might be the reason for like even Segrin like someone who is like a council member like someone who is like such a extremely top position and important position basically him like totally giving so much importance to like and to like natural uh, uh, solely due to like the realization of like natural being like against some is definitely my brain would be such because of this is definitely my brain deep down my brain will be having that absolute desire to like eventually get revenge on Natsu. And definitely like Natsu's father Ragni as well would be literally like even to the person just definitely with it. And Tegren would be like the fight to more than anything like Tegren would be the fight to like get revenge on like Ragni. It's definitely to find and get revenge to fight and for and defeat and take the life of like to make Ragni suffer and that way to like get revenge on Ragni to for taking like the life of Tegren's like father might be like Tegren's like uh, ultimate goal or one of like Secretariat's like ultimate goal. So I'm like about into that I'm going to find. So definitely I'm going to connect what Secretariat would be like totally planning would be to like have to eventually make to once like Secretariat will be finding Dragon Age. That at that point it's for Secretariat to like basically in front of like Dragon Age to like make Nasu suffer and basically to like attack to fight and attack Nasu and to or for and defeat and take the life of Nasu in front of like uh Nazi part of like Dragonil, and that way to like realistically make Dragonil suffer. And then to for like President to take Dragonil, like this might be like Severan's like ultimate villain stick revenge plan against like Dragonil. So also the feeling of the Rampage. So definitely those were like backdooring like Severin as well as like as of like childhood like and those are, like they might have during their childhood like they might have grew up together like after like losing their parents like what might have happened might have been like they might have Severin and Erza might have grew up in like together in like an orphanage and then like back then like I'm sure like Severin might have had this like extreme to start to like get revenge on like to find eventually one day finds Dragonil and get revenge and like the life of like definitely one of the dream so back then like campus were like as well might have been of like the same mindset as that of like Severin definitely one of the dream but like as they grew up and definitely I'm still thinking about the premise that like Severin especially from that orphanage might have were adopted into like a noble family and since like being from like a noble family is like kind of like I think that kind of like a partner for like to be a council member like I'm definitely that might have been how like Severin might have made it to becoming a council member. It is like Michael Sagan. So definitely in the case of like Erza, like I'm like Erza might have not got adopted. So like I'm like in the case of Erza, like I'm like as Erza grew up, like I'm like Erza might have came to like the realization that slowly that basically uh Erza might have had like as Erza grew up like unlike in Centurion case, like in Erza's case, like Erza might have gained that absolute clarity and realization that basically the actual members of like the villain and basically like the normal guild members are like the guild members that are actually generally fighting to like protect or the innocent people and so everyone across the world while like the dark members are like the pro villains. So like basically as like as I grew up might have came to the realization that like the villains were actually sort like parents who were like the dark members of the team and the brain. So like I'm also very like if some might have came to such a realization and some might have regretted being born to like council members. It's also like a possibility that I'm also like, this might be the reason for like right now it's like that's emotionally tells the dialogue that like the child doesn't get to like shape their parent like until it comes into like Lucy and during like Erza would be like getting emotional because like Erza would be like relate to that dialogue so much to like Erza's life as well and Erza's regret of being born to like dark movement is also like a possibility that I'm looking for recording and my person very impressive. And my person very impressive that like it might have been also due to the like regret that like that's what grew up might have had within her connecting to her parents being like dark members of like about that I'm that like at that point of the realization like might have decided to like devote her entire life to like basically make up for like the wrongdoings of like her parents by being part of that, by joining one of like phenomenal guilds and fighting and devoting her entire life with that absolute dedication to like fight for like the safety and protection of like the innocent people also all out there. It's definitely like the ambition. So like that way like might be like how Asra might have ended up joining like the fairy tales guild. And this might be the reason for like Asra taking all the rules of like the guilds and everything so extremely seriously and Asra alone like being more devoted to like following all the rules and maintaining strict order in like the guild, even way more than any other guild member of like where the guild would be odd due to that possible regret and guilt like within Arsa, which like Arsa would be like for Arsa would be like the friendly trying to like make up for Stephanie might be the case. It's also like a positive that I'm looking at. So like I'm feeling like eventually after like joining like the fairy still like I'm feeling like macro might have definitely noticed like might have been able to sense something like that like deep down within Arsa that was like disturbing Arsa. Macro might have been able to sense that and might the macro at one point being like the same path like back when Erza was like even younger like and was like part of like together like at that point I'm looking like macro might have definitely had that private talk with like Erza where like I'm looking like macro might have asked Erza as for like what it is what it was that he can sense that something is like constantly disturbing Erza and what it was like macro might have calmly asked Erza calmly and in a concerned manner might have asked Elsa and like at that point like Elsa might have been broken down and Elsa might have actually cried a lot in front of like Makarov at that point. And Elsa might have totally at that point might have even revealed to like Makarov that like Elsa is like the daughter of like of like castle members might have been considering like something that Erza might have uh, that way like confessed and told to and revealed to Makarov in like the symbols. It's also like a possibility that I'm looking and maybe so that way like Makarov during that talk between like Erza during the confession of Erza, this might have happened to like Makarov in the symbols like Erza might have also revealed to Makarov maybe that like Secretary, like one of like, the council members, Secretary is like Erza like sibling as well. This crucial information as well. Like maybe Afra might have revealed to like Macro, which like all this information about the Macro might have kept it. Might have only kept it that absolute secret, like exactly like definitely about the like Macro might have definitely knew that Afra. The last thing Afra would want would be for anyone to like find out about it. So like about the like Macro might have kept that get that an absolute secret from each and every single member of like the relatives will definitely never do it. So like until like even while I think like Secretary had recently showed up to like the relatives recently like and I think like had talked to like Macro, I think like basically that even back then I was while Macro was talking to like Secretary, I think like basically Macro might have been well and fully aware that like Secretary like a council member like Secretary is like actually like the sibling of like back then like Secretary and then like Macro might have been while talking to like Secretary Macro might have been well and fully aware of this. It's also like a possibility that I'm going to bring up my question. And I'm going to bring like this crucial information about the friend like Macro might have not even revealed to possibly his wife as well like that this sort of woman who lives in the solitude in the forest and sitting the memories that he might be like Macro wife but still Macro might have not even revealed about his social details connecting to like a prime secret and like the rascal to not even to like just why it is a just like my question. Also the name of the reason that I'm sitting on to basically ask for like why do this father like concern right now you know Friday wants to like do keep that like I'm still in the Bible for like two possibilities. Like one possibility would be like the possibility that basically concern might right now might might have gotten like an opportunity to become like a council member, like a possibility that I'm doing. But like concern himself won't be able to like concern might have had like some sort of like an issue of something that might have happened with like concerning like the past, which might have the news about it might have gotten leaked and like that way concerns might certainly not be able to that even though concern and possible maybe like will be like badly wanting to that be a council member like concern won't be able to that ever see a council member might be like situation with that concern but like I'm like maybe that concern maybe right now eventually might have only recently like a concern might have figured out like a way to like bypass such a situation by using Lucy and having Lucy make it to as like becoming a council member so that like using Lucy as like a puppet like concern might be planning on like basically being able to like roll over as like a council member uh, like um, uh, and gain like the powers that is like a council member would be having like basically for like concerned to gain all that by using Lucy by having Lucy be a council member but yet like by having like Lucy just like a puppet council member like basically this might be like such a villainous bizarre it's like only one possibility that I'm whispering as right now as well like why all of a sudden right now concerned so badly want Lucy back so like so one possibility that I'm doing the other possibility that I'm thinking about to especially for like maybe like the reason being that of like for political marriage because like concerned would be obsessed with like money and like making more money and being more powerful. So like I'm just like you know concerned right now without with you like seeing Lucy as a like way to like make all that money and gain even more power through like a political marriage for like Lucy. It's like the other possibility that I'm looking maybe this being like the reason for like concern all of them right now badly wanting Lucy back. It's like the other possibility that I'm looking for. Also, the name of Korean Muslim as well as for like basically the names of like Natsu, like the salamander Natsu and Lucy and like Mr. Jin as well as like spreading through like the area where like Jose lives like I'm different like that different still I'm still remember the English of that like as for like the remaining unrevealed senior members of like the fairy tale I'm different definitely they will be a whole lot stronger than even like that's like and Mr. Jin, which definitely my different impression. So definitely bring like those underrated senior members of the they are how to be exceptionally strong, but like bring like the only difference would be like their way of like approach when it comes to like taking up a professional job or like doing any sort of like mission will be that of like extreme in like an extreme stealthy manner, and that way like while like as for like lactose student and to and all of them like basically while they will be like approaching and like taking up a mission like as like how they will be executing and completing that mission will be in like a noisy and like attention attracting manner. And this will be the precise and sole reason that I'm looking for like it is the names of specifically like Lucy Natu and Instagram and like alone like basically spreading to like the area where like Jose and his like kind of kids live is definitely my good impression. While in actuality, I'm looking like those underrated senior player still members who is a whole lot stronger than even like than Instagram. It's definitely my first impression. Anyway, so like looking at the system right now for like to not be a liability to like the parents and to not have like the parents will lose their morale. Like I'm looking right now, what are out there right now planning would be like I'm looking like would be to like use like use all of our power and basically to like in a self-destruction manner like to try to like Saudi right now trying to like take out like basically while sacrificing herself like trying to like take out Jose as well which will be what like Saudi right now trying to do. It's definitely my very impression. So like yet like I'm delivering definitely as like Erza right now would be about to do that like I'm delivering will be precisely when like I'm putting Makarov will be showing up. It's like the scenario that I'm delivering. So and I'm delivering that way seeing how like Erza like self destruction attack attempt like Erza as well like ending up stopping that on thing like on talking thing Makarov right there at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point I'm delivering like Makarov uh, going to the extreme of like even begging to like Jose to like basically to leave just like a fairy tale guild member all of them alone and to like not cause any harm to them and basically instead like and to like not take Lucy either and like for instead of doing all that like basically for like Jose definitely during macro they were fully aware of how extremely jealous like Jose is like macro. So like I was looking at that point like macro of course macro like telling Jose that basically that Jose can do anything he wants with like macro, but like in exchange to like basically to like let us like Faraday guild go and like basically to not cause any harm to like the best will be along the lines of the friends or macro pleading and begging to let Jose and like at that point like I'm looking like Jose will be laughing that like 3 million people laugh at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And then like Jose like totally straight away like putting on a fake act and basically straight away telling Macro that he agrees and then the person like straight away like I'm doing Jose like unleashing his power and basically causing that absolute suffering for Macro who without even any magic like basically will be going through such feat won't be able to like have any sense at all against all that powerful magic of like both of them. Like I'm doing Macro totally suffering in pain and screaming like the scenario that I'm looking at. As like at that point when we are rushing to like attack Jose, at that point I was like even in that absolute pain, like I'm looking at her shouting out at like Erza to like and telling her no to like just stop and basically that like he's doing all this for them like basically that like and that way like I'm looking like Erza in an extremely painful and rejection manner like I'm looking Erza like containing herself and basically Erza painfully witnessing and I'm looking by then like I'm looking Elfman as well as everybody else who's like right there like Elfman, Mara as well as Grey like all of them by then will be like snapping out and waking up and getting back to their consciousness. So at that point, everything them all would be seeing like macro like suffering in front of them, like going through all that pain for them to protect them. And so like I'm looking like all of them would be totally struggling to like contain themselves and not attack Jose. But like I'm looking like then I'm looking that way like Jose like intensifying his like attack and while laughing that realistic laugh and basically that way Jose taking the life of Macro, which is like the scenario that I'm looking like. So like that way like Macro as like Macro were like right about to die at that very last second like as like Macro be almost about to die like at that very last second I'm looking like Jose Dorley mocking and making fun of Makarov and maybe even calling villainously calling Makarov a fool and basically to believe that Jose would be like letting his like guild members like go just like that So like I'm looking at that point with that absolute pain and suffering, like I'm looking like Makarov would be like, and that absolute sheer disappointment I'm looking like Makarov, I'm looking like maybe in tears, like I'm looking to be how like Makarov would be like ending up dying, ending up having his like life taken by Jose at that point of like the scenario that I'm looking like. So like at that point I'm looking like definitely all of them like up and all of them will be like so thinly enraged and like Jose. So like at that point I'm looking like Erza, like the team of like Erza, Elfman, Nora, as well as like Erza, Elfman, and Nora, as well as Grey, like I'm looking like all of them like when extremely shocked and enraged, man, like I'm looking maybe like them charging towards like Jose and like Jose with like a single attack like only or and that one was the scenario that I'm doing or like I'm doing from the shock of like macro stuff like I'm doing like and all of them that would be in that shock and would be surrounding that body of matter. So like I'm doing like them would be all crying and basically would be in that shock and won't be able to like, do anything at all. They will be totally shattered and basically would be feeling only powerless at that point and drowning in that absolute sadness of like matter of that maybe at that point like being especially when like that would be like showing up to that flaw and like now to openly finding out about like matter of having died and like so they haven't taken matter of like so like at that point I was like even to this shock like I was not to alone like reacting like extremely enraged manner and charging with all of like Nato's current strength against like Jose and like surprise between like Jose and Nato like happening at that point is like the scenario that I was saying. Okay, so like the minimum mission right now, like Makarov and Jose, like using the pro power of like American still I'm going definitely like the almost like the majority of like Makarov's pro power definitely I'm going to like even right now it's like Makarov's like powering up like that would be only a fraction of like the true power of like Makarov definitely version. That's the majority of like the true power of like Makarov would still be totally gone right now with the areas. Definitely I'm agree. So like I'm pretty like in the current fight between like Macro and Jose, I'm definitely putting like Macro, even though initially I'm putting like even with that fraction of it like Macro's close point, like I'm putting like Macro would be like totally initially giving Jose a struggle in that fight is like the narrow that I'm doing. That way like I'm putting that extreme gap and difference between like the strength in like Macro and Jose. Macro's proof like if Macro had all of this like if area didn't take out like uh take away like my boss like through magic balls like basically like that those they wouldn't stand a chance at all at in like the person against macro that the point would be being like far too obvious for like Jose as Jose at that point while Jose would be struggling against like only a fraction of like macro's footprint reflecting the scenario that I'm looking that as well only affects Jose's ego like the scenario that I'm looking yet like I'm looking like scenario to be like Jose struggling his way into like still or for and defeating macros like the scenario that I'm looking at. I feel like Jose will be able to take macros like that. At that point, I was looking at macro almost like they maybe attempting like using some sort of like a self-destruction kind of like an attack, like the scenario that I'm doing. Yet like I'm doing, it would be such a specific magical attack where like I'm doing it, even though Erza and Headman and all of them are like nearby, like Mara and all of them are like on the sidelines in that very same kind of guild-based giant with base building like I'm doing still. It would be unbelievable that self-destruction kind of like a attack that macro will be using at that point would be in like a such a controlled and specific and focused manner that basically it would be only precisely affecting Jose alone. And basically macro that way trying to go out while trying to take out like Jose along with like the scenario that I'm looking like. So like I'm looking at that point like I'm just considering like Jose being so extremely scared of like the extreme intensity of like that final attack of like of macro like scenario that I'm looking so and macro would be like also revealing to like Jose while launching that attack that basically after this attack like macro and Jose won't be alive. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And Jose will be only stopped and terrified at that point. And I'm delivering and I'm delivering at that point for two possibilities. As like now macro will be like about to will be chopping up and that attack will be launching like position like maybe while almost about to like send off that attack like I'm doing like maybe like I'm going macro's like body giving up due to like the extreme absorption of that basically having like the majority of like macro mana on like a little bit like macro's body like and coupling that with like macro old age and everything like I'm the extreme old age and everything like I'm doing like macro body will be probably exhausted and macro body like giving up and that way like macro not being able to like launch that ultimate attack and like okay is like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like at that point, like I'm looking like the extremely shocked and scared. Jose at that point all of a sudden not being able to like believe it, and I'm looking like Jose in like crazy manner like laugh once again laughing is like realistic laugh, and like at that point like the very next attack like Jose taking out Master Makarov like the one possible scenario that I'm looking for. Like the other possible scenario that I'm looking for like Makarov actually launching that ultimate self-destruct kind of like an attack to like take Jose out with like Makarov. Yet like I'm looking like to like the majority of like Makarov's like magic being lost. Something like and even through like Makarov's like fight against Jose as well as like that fight will be something itself like from like the uh fraction of like Makarov's through strength and mana itself like and a lot of magic will be lost while fighting off against Jose. So like that final point while Master Makarov will be trying to like take out Jose along with him and will be about to like launch that will be launching that attack like I'm looking like even though that attack will be launched like I'm looking like while Makarov will be ending up dying through that attack like I'm looking like even though I'm looking like still that attack like seriously and badly injuring Jose as well. But still Jose managing to like still survive that attack like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking like still Jose will be shocked at like the extreme power gap between that true extreme power gap between like Jose and Macros like scenario that I'm looking. So like at that final attack of like Macro ending up like while causing serious injury to like Jose and Jose being shocked and like Jose feeling that he has survived and Jose and was like quickly at that point itself like basically will be shocked yet like will be totally confused and scared and so like Jose at that point like quickly escaping and like flying away and escaping like scenario that and yeah like Jose would be realistically satisfied seeing that the macro having ended up flying it's like they need the scenario that I'm doing. Yeah, like Jose being scared as well and like quickly flying away and escaping and retreating for like the time being like in the scenario that I'm also delivering as for like the other possibility that I'm delivering and I'm okay, so like the film I'm mentioned right now is that like even though it might have been most likely citizen that might have collected up like spell of magic of like macro and basically given it back to like macro like and the still by the time like citizen might have gone up to like collect all this magic of like macro and something like the majority of that magic that was lost might have totally permanently dissipated and might have been permanently gone. Like, definitely not the same. So like I mean like it would be like a small fraction of like macros actual total magic that was like lost that mathematician might have even been able to collect and give it back to like macros. Definitely not the able to do like I was like even right now I'm looking as like macro is like about to fight off against like Joseph macro would be like fighting off on such an extreme disadvantage where like I'm looking like macros like current true strength like the current true strength and true levels of magical powers of macro like even below half of that power would be with which like would be what like Makarov right now having and with which like Makarov right now fighting off about like fight off against Jose with which uh, against like Jose with it's also definitely not the train with so like I'm definitely putting like a Makarov totally in the fight against like Jose right now. I'm still thinking about the preparation that like, Macro would eventually be forced to like use like some sort of like a destruction kind of like an attack, and even that attack definitely ending up not ending up being like strong enough to like basically take off Jose and Jose that way like still even though it will be causing serious injuries to like Jose, I'm considering like Jose still managing to like survive and escape. This like the more likely possible scenarios that I'm considering and understand. It was like the minimum drinks right now, like you can say like the war will soon be over to like the witch doctor woman. Like I'm wondering that would be totally instant like overconfidence with the minimum of the revelation because like I'm wondering like while the student saying like the war will soon be over like that would be the student saying it along the lines of like macro being like the one to like soon end like the war and basically macro being the one to like totally with like the power that Mr. Magic that Mr. Then would have totally collected and give it to Macro like totally overpowering and defeating Jose and maybe even like the life of Jose and basically like destroying like the entire like the standard skill and basically that way like the war quickly being over would be along the lines like of like along the lines like the citizen right now would be thinking and would be or constantly thinking about and feeling and believing is definitely never created. But like I'm saying that should not be the case, even though I'm considering like the war most likely would be getting soon over like, and this would be the potential reason for like Mr. not if Mr. himself like not even bothering to like go up to help Makarov out like by fighting alongside Makarov against like Jose. Even the fact that Mr. is not doing that would be also solely due to like Mr. overconfidence. Definitely that like Makarov by himself with like whatever magic tech Mr. would have given back to like Makarov with that power set, like macro be more than strong to like basically in a one versus one fight to bring down Jose. It would be along the lines that or confidence that Mr. would be having. But like I'm definitely solely due to that or confidence of Mr. able to like the fairy tech and that effect the pair still having a huge loss and that the thing that would be the death of like macro by Jose and it's like scenario that I'm looking for. So if it is only little like Mr. or something that like Mr. is not going to that market at health macro or definitely member reason. But like I'm still thinking member reason that like definitely that with like the money that like concern would have with like the huge sum of money that concern would have already given to like Jose for this mission like I'm like Jose might have been able to like power himself up to all sorts of like unique magical items by buying all sorts of expensive and exceptionally dangerous and powerful like unique magical items and everything. Like I'm going to be having like all sorts of such items with him right now. Either in his pocket or like as like rings or like as like ornaments, like it will be like magical items, like exceptionally dangerous and powerful magical items. So like about which like I'm going to like about which like I'm going to definitely Mr. will be having absolutely no idea at all. And that would be the reason for like Mr. Jones like current or confidence also like about the energy. So like that more confidence of Mr. or like that pairing and like I'm going to like eventually as like fight really like macro and Jose progresses to them to bring like eventually resulting in like Jose ending up taking the life of macro. Just like the scenario that I'm looking for the or like macro like using more likely I'm looking for like macro use being forced to like due to that reason macro being forced to like use some sort of like a destruction attack and basically through that like macro getting upside while those will be still surviving. It's like still in the scenario that I'm sitting on the brain. Okay, so like the premium premium right now as for like a single misjudgment by now already having taken out all of like the fans of the potential like the premium premium right now so like but this is like actual true strength spring right now would be like almost or like the very equal with that of Joseph. Joseph's like true strength is definitely one of the premium right now. So, and I'm remembering when it comes to like macro, like I'm referring to macros, true strength, even at macro current age, like macro's true strength will be far, not just surpassing that of Lebdoke, but like far surpassing that of your definitely member the revenue. Yeah, like I'm referring still thinking about the that like currently as like macro like about to fight up against Jose. Macro still would be at the disadvantage because like when it comes to like macro's true strength, like I'm referring macros like current levels of strength would be like even beneath the half levels of like macros like true strength is definitely as like macro right now is about to fight off against those definitely will be able to go. Definitely about the member definitely putting like intelligence like true actual current full strength would be almost like almost totally equal to that of Joseph's current full strength. This is like my book impression right now. So like my book impression is for like what might have happened will be that once like Mr. might have gathered up all the remaining magic in like the air of that and gave it to like macro like at that point self chemical macro on regaining that even if like according to my preference it will be even lesser than like the half of like the total strength of macro that like macro could have returned still like still I'm once macro has regained back that much of strength itself like I'm like the very first thing macro might have said to Mr. might have been for like Mr. to like not show up to the wow it's definitely my preference because like Makarov himself would be well and fully aware that like if Mr. Like that like Mr. By himself would be possibly able to like totally give serious trouble to like Jose. Jose's response would be along the lines like it would be like the actual situation to do one thing that like Makarov would be most likely well and fully aware of. It's definitely my preference. Like like once like Makarov had recovered that much itself, like Makarov might have straight away told Mr. to like not show up to like the war because like I'm looking for macro might have been in such an extreme emotional, especially because like macro is in like such an extremely emotional situation and like definitely this like war to fight against like Joker and like fan will be something that macro will be like right now totally seeing as like a personal thing for like macro that like macro has to like finish himself and especially with like macro right now even revealing how like basically blames himself for like basically for like the suffering of like the fairy tales guild members and like for like the destruction of like the fairy tales guild members, all that like for all their suffering and for all that like things like Makarov right now blaming himself heavily under the second Makarov before they see that all this as like a his personal fault. It's definitely his personal fault and his personal mistake and blunder. Could be along the lines Makarov be seeing definitely one of the so like macro will be like emotionally feeling for that. It's definitely one of the so like I'm thinking like macro would be like so desperate feeling so desperate right now to like correct all that to make up for it all by himself like fighting against like Jose and himself or falling and defeating and bringing down Jose by himself and maybe like a different macro would be like so extremely have would you have deep down that extreme praise due to like what the sufferings is like guild members have gone through like under different like macro to be like uh, and due to like since that macro is blaming himself like there will be that extreme rage as well as that extreme frustration within like macro uh uh definitely my frustration like macro would be right now maybe due to that like macro would be right now totally absolutely determined and it will be like the top priority for macro that like macro himself has to like fight Jose and basically fight and ensure to like bring down Jose and maybe even take Jose's life that but like maybe not just about the day like macro still not be to be not planning on like taking Jose's life but like to thoroughly overpower and bring down and defeat and like totally instill that absolute fear into like Jose by totally crushing Jose. This would be like right now like Macro's like ultimate goal, and that way to like get revenge for like Jose against like Jose and like the fans. Like this would be like such an absolute personal thing. Along the lines would be how like Macro will be seeing it. Definitely remember the so like definitely because of all the reason I don't remember the chance right now totally pretending to be like on Macro's owner alone that like I'm like Mr. Right now not showing up to like the war. It is only according to like Makarov's orders to get to meet Michael's status. So even though in an emotional man in the way this overconfidence of like Makarov like seeing this basically rather than remembering what Makarov might have done might have been like rather than seeing this in like the current situation like a logical manner and to like rather than increasing like their skills like the that's possibility of like basically bringing down like phantom skills and Jose Makarov might have only thought of that and taken decisions in an extremely emotional and personal manner and unfortunately due to this reason and then off confident manner and due to this reason and like the entirety of like the heritage skills like unfortunately eventually ending up suffering through that macros that is like the scenario that I'm doing macro definitely I'm still remember the range that like Macro won't be right now in that current fight against Jose. Macro won't be able to like bring down defeat of or bring down Jose. It's like the scenario that is sitting on the range. So that's a level. Even the ambition right now is that even though Erza, Grey, Elfman, and like Mara are like totally leaving to like let Macro fight freely against like Jose. Like but still like the fact that like Erza and all of them have totally forgotten about like the presence of like Natsu and Lucy in that very same fan of guild base. Like I'm thinking that number would be like the eventual factor of that number would be most likely maybe resulting in like eventually resulting in like macros death by the hands of like jokers like the possibility that I'm going because like I'm considering right now of like the possibility that basically in like the macro would joker fight like I'm considering like macro right now would be like Charlie overpowering and defeating Jose. So like I'm considering like Jose Charlie getting overpowered but like I'm considering maybe at that point would be when like Natsu and Lucy would be like showing up into like the middle of that battle is like the scenario that I'm remembering. So like I'm remembering like or like we'll be standing from the sidelines and watching like the battle. So like I'm remembering like would be showing up. Like I'm remembering like it to be like that final scenario where like Makarov is early or for Jose and like Jose would be totally feeling hopeless as if like and would be feeling that fear that basically he might even end up dying by the hands of like Makarov. But like it would be at that point that I'm referring maybe like Jose noticing like Natsu and Lucy from like the sidelines like in that building. So like I'm referring maybe at that point like Jose totally like putting out this like villainous strategy where like I'm referring maybe like Jose learning some sort of like quickly while without Makarov while Macro would only focused on Jose, like I'm like Jose would be quickly pulling out of like billions of strategy and like Jose quickly pulling out like some sort of like an ultimate with like ultimate powerful attack and Jose totally launching that uh, at like either Nasu or Lucy to like and that attack would be so extremely intense and powerful that might have like the power to like take the life of like Nasu or Lucy or like I'm like Jose sending out that attack straight towards like where like both Natsu and Luffy will be. So like that so like I'm assuming at that point like I'm doing macro might have been until that point might have been thinking that they did that like absolutely that every fair guild members have left like the kind of guild base with the along the lines macro might have been things until that point. So like I'm doing seeing Natsu seeing like Jose all of a sudden like that launching his attack towards like Natsu and Lucy, like at that point, like I'm like it might be possibly being like that unexpected shock for like Makarov. So at that point, like to save Natsu and Lucy, like I'm assuming that Makarov totally like jumping in front of that ultimate powerful attack of Jose to like protect Natsu and Lucy, and that way like maybe like Makarov ending up dying by like Jose's like powerful attack like Disney, and that way like Macro ending up dying by Lotus powerful attack, and that way like Macro protecting like Nasus and Lucius. In such a manner, that changes scenario of like a positive that I'm looking, and that being like the biggest shock for like a traumatic kind of like a shock for like both Nasu and Lucius. It's like also like an intercosmic scenario that I'm looking for, and my personal reaction. So the film of direction right now is literally like since like Macro in like the beginning has revealed to be able to possess some sort of like a powerful transformation like some sort of like a giant like I'm like the very beginning I'm looking like Macro definitely currently like Macro's current fight against like those definitely able to like Macro bringing out that transformation giant transformation power of like Macro. It's like the scenario that I'm something in so it's like I'm looking at Macro like transforming into like this huge maybe intimidating kind of like a giant transformed form is like the scenario that I'm looking at. At that point, I'm looking for like Joe is easily getting like scared and like easily will be easily getting overpowered by Nagaro. At that point, is like the scenario that I'm looking only for. And I'm looking like with like Jose right now revealing how like Makarov and Jose had last fought 6 years back. Like I'm looking at back then, like I'm looking like in the fight against like Jose 6 years back, like Makarov might have definitely not sure used not even a fraction of like Macro's proof point. So like back in that fight between like Jose that might have taken place 6 years back, like Makarov might have not even used like the giant transformation form power of like Makarov at all. It's definitely not possible. Like Jose would be only finding out about like Makarov having such a giant transformation ultimate power form only right now in certainly Jose will be finding out about it only right now in like the current fight between like Makarov and Jose like living scenario that I'm looking at not things. Okay, so that's the minimum direction right now is that basically since like happy is right now holding on to that Lucy and since like Natsu's right now excited on realizing that Makarov back like I'm definitely I'm right now for like Natsu totally wanting to like super like it would be totally rare to see like Makarov like fight at just like pro strength definitely not the ratio. So like I'm like Natsu right now feeling excited and wanting to like see like Makarov's like pro strength and I'm bring like that's like the scenario that I'm putting through such curiosity I'm going to bring like maybe like I'm going to bring like Natsu telling like happy to like get away to a safe area with like Lucy and that way like happy taking Lucy away and like at that point like Natsu will be telling happy that like he will be right back and so like I'm looking with that absolute excitement and curiosity I'm looking like Natsu like slowly creeping up from like the sidelines and usually to watch like the fight between like the intense fight between like Jose and like Macro. But like I'm looking like as that fight would be so I think I'm definitely critical observation for like Macro in this early or for an defeating Jose and that as like Jose would be feeling hopeless at that point I'm looking like Jose noticing like Nacho's presence from like the sidelines like he is stopping that fight. So like I'm looking at that point when Jose would be feeling hopeless like I'm looking at that point like Jose using like the very strategy and usually using some sort of like an ultimate attack against like after that like Naku and like considering at that point for like Macro totally that it would be totally unexpected for Macro because like even at that until that very last second Macro would be totally unaware of like Naku's purpose there. So like I'm looking like Macro at that point like jumping in front of that intense powerful attack of like Jose to like protect Nasu, and that way like I'm looking like Nasu. So definitely after Dragonil had basically left him with after like Nasu actual father like Dragonil had left him with like Ignil, and then like since then I'm like Ignil might have been whom like Nasu might have been seeing as like a Ignil the dragon might have been whom like Nasu might have been seeing as like a father figure, and with like Ignil as well right now missing like with the after joining like the fairy tale skill like like it might have been then like macro that might have been like Nasu might have been seeing as like as the father figure. But like I'm bring like that way that right now in the person like I'm bring like the initial scenario to be like macro having to that basically sacrifice the life to like totally protect Nasu. To solely due to like Nasu's carelessness. So like I'm bring Nasu having that absolute shock at like seeing someone who's like absolutely so precious to like Nasu as like that absolute father figure for like Nasu like the person like macro that basically dying to like protect Nasu from like those who like powerful like that. So like at that point I'm also like definitely that being that absolute shock for like Nasu. Hence, definitely on the different that from that point on the different that definitely that that guilt would be extreme and within that guilt of that that guilt would be extreme within the thing like not would be only blame himself for like macro stuff that basically just due to like not to and his curiosity and that like basically macro had to die and basically all that like not to observe for a long time after that like blaming himself and going through this like extreme kind of demotivated and down kind of like a situation. And then like eventually definitely at that point even though macro will be like I'm critically able to that like that uh which woman doctor like I'm like have eventually replacing my was like the new half protects the stereotype did and I'm like eventually I'm like to be through her that like I'm like through her being like richly talking to find it out into like nothing like an extremely harsh and cold manner that I'm like now to be having that kind of that realization kind of like a feeling that where like I'm like until then I'm not to be blaming himself and I'm like all the remaining member like members like trying to like comfort Natu and telling Natu that basically no it's not Natu's fault that like Nagaro had died and all that. But like I'm like Natu will be still going through still continuing on to this like town and this kind of like a state. But like I'm like eventually that which Dr. Woman like once she would be becoming that not like fairy tale girl that that eventually it would be her that I'm like walking up to the, like that absolute seriousness like I'm like her walking up to Natu and like actually telling Natu that like just it is not Natu's fault that usually Macro has died and Natu has to like accept that and move on from that and basically and think about what Natu can do from this point on to make it up for like that to make it up for that along this line some of the like that with proper woman like I'm looking at that point in a half and cold manner like and with that absolute seriousness telling natural at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking and that being like that absolute shock for example is like the scenario that I'm looking and that would be what like I'm like eventually would be like bringing Natu back from his like different state and I'm like at that point like Natu probably making that promise and vows to like himself to be as strong as he can, as like definitely to be like as strongest in like the world, so that like he could like totally eventually replace Macro and be like the master. He could like totally make it up for like Macro by eventually being as strong or even stronger than even surpassing Macro and becoming an even better master of like the fairy tale. Yes, what happens he becomes um, like an eventual master of like the fairy tale skill that's like even better than macro. That one which like macro from above would like only look at and be absolutely proud of that duty. That way like I'm delivering with that Nato at that point making that promise to that point that basically like Nato from that point on like with that absolute determination like taking up like the job and going back to his so it's like a normal, like online happy and more online happy self, but like this time we will be a lot more like determined and motivated than before to get stronger. Definitely not doing the scenario that I'm putting another thing. Okay, so like you know the dream right now I thought like why is that fairy law magic of like macro right now is like such an extremely powerful and intense magic like I'm looking like still that won't even be like the strong actual true strongest magic of that Makarov. So sort of deep Makarov version, right? Okay, so like the film of the presentation right now with like the elements of Arya, like once again trying to like basically steal like Makarov magic. Like after this time, like definitely I'm like Makarov, definitely I'm won't be making the same mistakes, right? Like this time while Makarov like showed up that he would be like he might have definitely shown up with that absolute focus with the film of the rest. Because like I'm doing the last time like it's so reason for like Arya even succeeding in like stealing Makarov magic, which is solely due to that Makarov back then being in like an extremely emotional and unfocused kind of like a situation due to like that extreme race and within like and frustration with the like micro friends. So like it might have been solely due to that lack of focus alone that they might have even succeeded in like stealing macro, freaking macro and stealing macro back then. But like I'm looking this time when macro showed up, macro might have been totally fully focused and definitely determined to like make that same mistake twice because like I'm a little macro might have only regretted like basically like even letting his like making like letting himself lose focus and getting his like match stolen by Arya. Definitely my position. Macro might have regretted that so much that I'm going to spend while Macro showed up. Definitely Macro be so extremely focused. He's definitely my position. So like I'm looking like right now it's like Arya's like for like the second time it's like trying to like steal Makarov's like magic again. Like on this time I'm able to bring two possibilities. Like one possibility is like as like Arya is like about to steal Makarov's magic from the kind like I'm going to bring you like one possibility is for like Nato coming flying in and basically with like a single attack like sending Arya flying away. It's like one possible scenario that I'm going to bring. Which like regardless of like Nato doing that like macro would be like totally able to like he might have been able to like easily sense like area for the from the kind of that point of like scenario that episode. So like I'm looking to about either that to like flying in and basically with like a single attack sending area flying away. Or like the other possibilities like macro himself like basically with like just a lift of his finger or like just a single attack like or uh like with like a single like small attack itself like I'm going to bring like macro sending area flying away. It's like the scenario that I'm going to do different and my birthday. Also I'm looking different for there to be like a secret quest in like the victory of like the Fairfield with or like the fans right now is definitely one of the greatest because like I'm looking like while Mr. Jin had shown up right on time like I was like the reason Mr. Jin even showed up might have been due to lack of like straight away like the moment like basically lack of Mara had basically Mira was like usually worried with like the attack of like the fans and like while incoming attack of like the fans and everything and while Mara had like phone like so back then like with like responding back in like a rude and insensitive and careless manner to like Mara, enraging Mara. Like basically, back then I was doing like even though like that might have been totally messing with like Mara, definitely not with the impression like what like might have done at that point itself might have been like after that phone call itself like that might have straight away phone like Mr. Jen and straight away told Mr. Jen of like the situation that like it's like and like might have even told him that like it's just the kind of thing. So like it's just like a small job to do. So like I'm assuming like that might have only straight away formed Mr. Jan told exactly this might have been what might have happened. And straight away like Mr. might have had off. And like that might be through like it might have been how like Mr. Jan might have been able to like make it in time and like turn things around for like the fairy tale bit. And that might be being like the sole reason for like the fairy tale bit right now being able to like keep their victory over like the fans build was definitely my consideration. So like I'm like that might have been secretly might have been that person who might have done that exact made that exact move on reactor and made that exact right move at the right time. Definitely my consideration. So like about which like I'm like you'll be totally insecure about like the fairy tales, other fairy all the remaining fairy tales members finding out that he genuinely cares about like the guild so much as much as everybody else. Definitely my preference. So like to be most likely having this insecurity. So like I'm doing this would be the reason for like it most likely will be totally putting on an absolute fake act that as if like he doesn't care at all about like any of the guild members or like even about like a guild or anyone. So definitely my preference. So and definitely macro alone would be like when I'm fully aware of this. To be like in the guild like I'm doing it will be macro alone as well as like the senior fairy tale guild members except for like that's that alone that will be aware of like of like lack of passion towards like the heritage. It's definitely my opinion. So yeah, so like this would be the reason for like macro definitely even keeping that to like a member of like the heritage. To be also due to like macro knowing a lack is part to it. It's also definitely not the end. Also definitely not the intention right now that is really, even though like macro right now has threatened Jose and like the fan to like never cross paths with like the therapist, still I'm looking like definitely Jose doing exactly that. Jose and like the fans still doing exactly that in like the distant future of like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm definitely prepping like definitely like the next time Jose and like the fans will be showing up like I'm looking they Jose would be like after like realizing the true strength of macro like right now and like Jose would be like the definitely not all willing at all like that crushing of like Jose's ego and like that embarrassment that was like totally exactly like Jose and like Gajian would be feeling exactly the very same kind of like an embarrassment feeling more than any other members of like the elder representative membership, and that feels frustrated that Jose as well as like Gazili would be feeling of would be of like the very same intensity especially by the grade, and they'll be more than ever determined to like bring about like the end of like the fair race and get revenge on like fair race. It's definitely one of the so like I'm like that an eventual different future revenge scenario by like the kind of happening with like the scenario that I'm doing. But like I'm doing that at that point in like the symbols of like the fantasy, like the next time they'll be making their revenge, like I'm doing like so they will be like doing all the homework and will be like well prepared for like the next time. So they and like friends will be launching their attack on like the fairy will and I'm doing like definitely I'm doing like this whole loss against like the web will resulting in like those and like the industry of the fans will like maybe shifting to like to a location that will be close to like the region where like all the dark kills will be and then definitely I'm considering in order for to get revenge on like the 20th guild and to destroy Makarov and destroy this will definitely Jose would be like seriously like creating bonds and connections with like the dark guild members like the all sorts of powerful and like the strong dark guild members like and like Jose like helping them out and like rolling in all sorts of way maybe in like by giving them money and all sorts of examples like those creating a huge secret alliance between like the Darkfield members to like the Harris members and members like usually like that way like and then like they say like making as well like through all sorts of like manner like those making as well like through cheating and all these things like between those making a lot of money as well. And I was like and those would be not only strengthening up like the entire with the Harris but like like those the next time I go, they will be attacking like the fair trade guild, like I'm going like it wouldn't just be like an attack from like some kind of guild alone, but like I'm going like it will be like an allied allegiance team based attack where like I'm going along with like the fans team, like there will be like a great number of like powerful dark guild members as well. Uh, dark guilds as well, that powerful dark guild. And then that whole army of like dark guilds with like powerful dark guilds as well will be like together launching the ultimate like attack against like fair places. That would be how like I'm looking like Jose and like the fantasy will eventually like the countries up would be taking the would be attempting at their revenge on like the fairy tale here for like the person just like the scenario that I'm considering right now. I'm not sure.